cannot figure out how to go through.
So, one of the great advantages of working at the DFR lab is that we actually have a partnership with Facebook, which means that we can do events like this on stages like this, which is great. We also get a lot of questions, how does the partnership actually work? And the way to understand it, you can think of this as an information sharing partnership, okay? It's not a data sharing partnership. We don't get our hands on the data. But the way this works in real life is that we will get a phone call. Somehow it's normally about 6 p.m. on a Friday. I'm not quite sure why that happens. It's the way it works. And it'll be Facebook on the phone, and they will be saying, hey guys, we're about to do a takedown. Here's a list of public pages that you really need to go and have a look at. And so we will go and we will have a look. And what we're looking at is public pages, which means that what we're seeing from the front end is exactly what any Facebook user would be able to see. It's just that we have the advantage that we know these are bad actors because Facebook have already concluded that. But what that means is that we're looking at a completely different set of signals from what Facebook are looking at internally. And then we can compare notes, and we can say, aha, this is what we found. What have you guys found? And we can talk through our findings. And the best example of this is the first Facebook public takedown of the Russian Internet Research Agency in July last year, where legendarily, looking at the back-end data, Facebook were able to say one of the things which tied these pages to the original Russian troll farm was that one of the pages was managed by a known troll farm account for just 7 minutes. That's the kind of thing you can do when you're Facebook looking at the data. We couldn't do that. We didn't have that kind of information. But what we were able to do was look at the front end and say, well, hang on, that meme that this page posted is a meme that the troll farm posted last year on Instagram. And so's that one. And so's that one. And we were able to go through the content and the communities that they were targeting and the use of language and the way they couldn't actually speak English properly and say, OK, purely from looking at the front end, we conclude that this is almost certainly the Russian troll farm. So Facebook work at it from the back end, we work at it from the front end, and we meet in the middle. And that's the way this partnership works. And it works for both of us because, frankly, we can't defend democracy alone. Platforms can't do it alone. Open source community can't do it alone. We need to do this together. But obviously, the best people to talk to you about the Facebook way of doing things are Facebook. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce Olga Belogolova, who is a lead analyst, in fact, the lead analyst at Facebook. That's another of those Facebook job titles which makes you think, what? What does a lead analyst do? Okay? Best explanation of this, I used to study Old Icelandic at college because it's the ideal preparation for the open source world. In Old Icelandic, in the sagas, there's a saga of Grettir the Strong. Grettir the Strong was famous as the greatest troll slayer in Iceland. Okay? If Facebook were a Viking longship, Olga would be Grettir the Strong. Her job is to find the trolls and to work out what to do about them. She's a journalist who's worked in the US, in Japan, and in Russia. She's a walking encyclopedia of troll operations, and she's going to talk us through the Facebook way to spot an info op. So Olga, please come on up.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that generous introduction. People make jokes about whether I'm the mother of trolls at work, and I hope that I'm not actually creating any trolls. I'm just trying to slay them. So what we're going to be doing here, I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible through the introduction because we are going to be playing a game, and that's the most important part. But I wanted to give you a bit of a refresher. So in case over the last 40-something minutes you've forgotten what Nathaniel was talking about earlier, I just wanted to refresh your mind about what it is that we are looking for when we are doing this game and when we're looking for coordinated authentic behavior. So, information operations, in case you've forgotten, are coordinated efforts to manipulate or corrupt public debate for a strategic goal. But that definition is wonderful, but what does it actually mean in practice? For an investigator, I need to be able to actually look for particular signals, and I need enforcement levers in which I can use in order to, enforce against activity that I find. and my colleagues and I find as well together. So this is the policy. It's part of our community standards. It's something that you can find, whether you're a Facebook user or not, on our platform. You can read all of the different standards that exist there. This is just one of the levers that we use against malicious activity on our platform or what we believe to be abusive. But for an investigator, again, this policy has a lot of information about what users are misleading other users about, what bad actors might be doing. But when I'm investigating, I need to be able to understand what coordination looks like. I need to find multiple accounts that are working together with one another. I also need to make sure that I hit that threshold of inauthenticity when I'm looking for this coordinated network of accounts that are working together. And finally, and probably most importantly, one of the things that we really focus on is behavior. You've heard the term coordinated authentic behavior, but the reason behavior is important is that we don't want to make decisions based on content. The content could come from multiple different sources, and we want to make sure that we're looking at the activities of the bad actors and seeing when they might be replicated in other situations and studying them and looking for their TTPs. The last thing I'll say here is that one of the things that we do when we find coordinated authentic behavior, we also find a number of other violations or violation types. The way we think about it is that this is the most sophisticated of the violation types. As you heard from Nathaniel, it's sort of the tip of the pyramid, the tip of the spear, and you can read about a number of the other enforcement standards that we have and actions that have been taken, but they're sort of the more low-hanging fruit, at least in terms of what my team is working on. So, we're going to talk about the game now.
So the way this game's going to work, you've got the envelope on the table. The envelope has 4 sets of 3 images each. Okay, so you've got 4 triads of images. In each triad, you have 2 posts or 2 pieces of information from traffic on Facebook, which is entirely innocuous. And you have 1, which is from an op. These are all from operations which have already been taken down. Okay? So if you actually know the answers to these already, if you've already studied these operations, please don't spoil the game. Keep it to yourselves. The way we're going to do this, to give you a fair run at it, we're going to divide the hall into 4 quadrants. Okay? So we'll draw a line between these tables here. We'll draw a line just down the back of Chris Roper there. We'll draw another line down here, and another line across here. Okay, so we've got 4 quadrants. This is going to be the quadrant of the rainbows. Okay, there are 3 images in there with rainbows. These guys are the rainbows. Okay, there are 3 images in there which are the French feminists. This quadrant is the French feminists. So look at the French feminist posts, work out which one is the info op. In this quadrant here, we have the cartoons. There are 3 posts which are cartoons. Look at the cartoons and work out which are the info ops. And then this quadrant here, you've got 3 descriptions of technical signatures of behavior in what might be an operation. So look at these are the text-only pages. So look at the text-only pages and work out which of them is the operation. I can see a couple of people who actually work at Facebook and work on the takedowns team. If you want to make friends with them, this would be a very, very good time to do so. We'll give you a few minutes to do that, and then we'll actually tell you what the answers are.
Yep. So we can see. Yeah, hopefully they don't cheat.
I'm finishing a data science master's here.
So just as a reminder for everybody, so rainbows, French feminism.
Yep.
Oh, wait, no.
Rainbows.
Rainbows, French feminism.
Cartoons.
Cartoons.
Text.
Text.
Yep.
I was seeing some confusion.
could be fishy. Yeah. We're trying to get into about 2 minutes. So does anyone have a thought other than the fact that they all have something peculiar about them?
Do you want to ask them to raise their hands?
Yeah, but I guess that's what he's saying. Just saying this chance would be. Yeah, I think that's well, we know that past operations have to divide, they'll do every purpose.
One more minute, ladies and gentlemen. One more minute.
Could you wrap? Can you invite everybody to coffee break and again remind everybody to take their shit?
Mic runners, or do we need people to shout? I'm wondering if we have microphones or we need people to shout.
We just get people to raise their hands. Show of hands.
So,
1, 2, or 3.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, time is up. Yep. Okay, so if we can all have the eyes on the screen, please. So, the rainbows, first of all. How did our rainbows get on? Oh, this group here was studying the rainbow images, right? Who thought that image number 1, the image on the left, was the operation? Hands up if you think it was 1. Table here? Other tables? Who thought that it was image number 2? Table here, table there, table there. Jolly good. You work at the DFR lab, that's cheating. Who thought it was image number 3? Yep, one over here. Jolly good. So, Olga?
Okay, so now the big reveal. So I'm going to first talk about the ones that are not part of an operation, and then we can talk a little bit more about the one that was. So number 2 and number 3 are not. And number 2 and number 3 actually come from legitimate verified accounts on both Facebook and Instagram that are focused on LGBTQ news and also just activism. They're verified accounts, they have real followings, and they are engaging on this topic as real activists. Number 1 is actually from an operation that we identified around the midterm election in November, and in the United States. I'm not in the United States, so I can't just say midterms and everybody understands what I mean. But this operation was something that we identified with the help of our partners in law enforcement, and we conducted a number of investigations into Instagram and on Facebook platform assets. And this was something, as you can tell, that looks somewhat like some of the other images that you saw over there, but is actually a photograph. And there are real people in this photograph, and there is a legitimate interest in engaging with this content. So let's move on to number 2.
So I think we're on the feminists. Right, where are our French feminists? These guys, ladies and gentlemen of the French feminists, félicitations. So who thought that it was image number 1 with Simone de Beauvoir? Here, 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 yeah, yeah. Who thought it was number 2? Okay, solid table here, a couple over there. Image number 3, or 3? Very good, very good. Okay, so again, we have a roughly even split between, who thinks it was all of them? All 3? All 3, okay, interesting call.
Well, it is just the one, and it is the one in the middle, so good job. Table wins, I don't know what, but you win the game. So I'll talk again about the ones that it is not first. So the one on the left with Simone de Beauvoir is actually from a Québécois newsletter called La Gazette des Femmes. And the one on the right is actually another newsletter, but has a verified account on Instagram called Les Glorieuses. And they're both legitimate accounts that are verified on both Facebook and Instagram platforms. The one in the middle is actually part of the same operation that we identified around the midterm elections, but this one was actually not focused on the United States, but was actually focused on France. And this is something that Ben and Camille, wherever you are, had done a lot of research and work on, so you probably cheated a little bit there. Do you want to add anything about the work that both of you had done on that particular investigation?
So this was a classic example where, having had the tip-off from Facebook, it was our job to look at this content and actually work out what was going on. And this was a particularly interesting one because it was operating in French, and some of the content was targeting France and French political issues, particularly attacking President Macron. But an awful lot of it was focused on French-speaking communities in other parts of the world, particularly in Africa. And so this was a real exercise in looking at the content and looking at the concept and breaking our minds out of the, if you like, the North Atlantic, the Euro-Atlantic paradigm, and thinking, actually, a lot of this content, sure, it's in French, but it's actually looking like it's targeting either French-speaking communities in Africa or communities of African origin in France. And there are some times when you're looking at the front end that you think, well, actually, it could be either. Open sources can't take us beyond a certain point. And so this was a really interesting exercise, both in expanding the mental horizon and thinking, okay, yeah, there's a point beyond which actually we can extrapolate what we think the actors were up to. We can see what they were doing it. But at some point, you have to say, well, the why, we're still not really sure.
And this is actually an example where the content might give you a little bit of a clue. If you're someone who studied Russian information operations as they've existed before, perhaps the winning table had thought about this, but Angela Davis is heavily featured over here. And Angela Davis has been a prominent figure in Russian information operations long before they were online. And so if you can read about the history of influence operations associated with Angela Davis that Russia's been engaged in for some time now, prior to the internet's existence. All right, next.
Set number 3, the cartoons. This quadrant here. Who thinks that it was cartoon number 1 on the left? Table here, table here, here, okay, jolly good. Who thinks it was the cartoon in the middle? Yep, very good. And the scream on the right? Okay, oh, a lot of popularity for the scream on the right, that's interesting.
All right, so it's actually number 1 in this particular case. It was part of an Iranian information operation that we identified in last summer and actually took down in August of 2018. The one in the middle is actually from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune and their public opinion page on Facebook. It's from Stephen Sack, who is one of the cartoonists for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and he was providing cartoon commentary on Brexit. The one that is number 3 is actually from Ian Bremmer's public-facing Facebook page, where he was also providing commentary on Brexit. So, number 1, as I said, was part of an Iranian information operation. And it's something that we identified and took down with the help of our partners. Again, partnerships are extremely important, and this is something that we did with the help of our partners at FireEye and also with the help of research from journalists. So really, really important to all work together on these things.
Great. And so the final quadrant, the technical descriptions of the behavior. You've all got these on the page in front of you, I think. So effectively, what we have here is 3 different types of behavior which you're looking into, and you're trying to work out what sort of behavior is suspicious. So who thinks that it was set number 1? Okay, quite a few hands going up there. Who thinks it was set number 2? Hands over here, couple down here. And who's going for number 3? Couple over there. Yep, one over there. Who thinks that they just can't actually tell and we need more information? Yep, that happens too.
I think I would say the winning table is the one that is asking for more information, and I'll explain why. I've actually made up the first 2 examples, completely made them up, fabricated out of my head. They're meant to sort of represent 2 different ideas. One, the first one, is meant to represent activists who are working to promote political issues that they are in favor of. They're trying to make sure that they're maintaining secrecy so that they can protect themselves as activists. And so that's where some of the obfuscation comes from. And of course, they're engaging on political issues, and they are trying to share their message in pages and events. The one in the middle, number 2, the fabrication there is meant to sort of replicate an international media organization. So some of you may work for international media organizations, and you know that you might have foreign bureaus, many different offices, employees that might have some similar iconography and some similar email addresses, and the accounts to be sometimes come from the same geographic location, but sometimes not. So those are the 2 made-up ones. And the last one actually brings us full circle in this conversation because it is what Ben was talking about when he first introduced me, which is why our partnership is so important and why it works well. This was actually from an operation that we identified and disrupted last July. And it was also linked to the Internet Research Agency actors, as Ben described earlier. And the behavior here is really important to understand and for us to study, as I said, much more important than the content piece. But what I want to say is that the factors that we took into account are much broader than that, and that's why the group that asked for more information is on the right track, because that's not enough information in any of these cases to know whether it's part of an information operation. And what actually allowed us to better understand what was going on here were links to a known operation that the Internet Research Agency had conducted previously, and links that, as Ben mentioned earlier, that 7 minutes was an important factor in this identification process. What was also important was the work that Ben was describing earlier, which is to evaluate the content and understand that it correlates to what we had seen before from these same actors. And so that provided more confidence for us and is very illustrative of why partnerships with the open source research community are so important for us. So I'm just going to close with a bit of a summary on where we are and what hopefully we've learned from this exercise. I think you know what we're getting at here is that this work isn't easy, and that we need to work together to better address it, to identify it, and to enforce against these kinds of information operations. The other important point is that on the surface, a lot of highly engaged civic actors may look like they're engaging in information operations, but you have to dig a little bit deeper to understand what other behavioral signals can you identify and what other partners can you work with to make sure that you're more confident about your assessment, because the cost of getting it wrong is high. Political speech, real legitimate political speech, is not something that we want to limit. And I think that that's where some of the difficulty around this work is. And finally, the last point here is that 3 minutes is obviously not enough to do this kind of work, and it takes a village to do it, and hopefully we can all work on this together.
So with that, we're actually going to break for coffee, because making contacts is probably the most important part of any conference. So your mission for the next half hour is to have coffee with somebody you've never spoken with before. Make a new connection. Please do take away your empties from the tables. It'll save a lot of work for everybody at the end, and we do have more table games coming up. So feel free to clear the tables, get some coffees, bring back the next round, and we will reconvene in half an hour. Thank you very much.